Why is the cost of living so high in America? Americans have been watching almost helplessly as the cost of living continues to aim for the sky. Everything from diapers to gas is adding more to its cost. This is trimming down the size of Americans' wallets. Last year, for instance, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD, says prices in the US jumped at the rate of 4.7% faster than any other G7 country. Are Americans getting close to their breaking point? Even living in suburbs in the US can be pricey. In this video, we will look at facts and figures surrounding the cost of living in the US. The focus shall be answering the question, why is the cost of living so high in America? Facts from key observations. According to the data from the Labor Department, the cost of cooking dinner on weekdays and fueling the car for average users has already shot up by 38% within 1 year. What about the cost of food, rent, utility and transportation? The same source says in the last 12 months that ended February, prices of each of these have gone up by at least 13%. That's the least percentage of increase in items making up the cost of living. That month, according to a global chief economist and strategist at Manulife Investment Management, Francis Donald, consumer prices increased at a level the country has not seen since the start of 1982. He added that these were more optional types of inflation. The true living cost in America. The true living cost, or TLC, reveals what inflation numbers are hiding. The question then is, what's the way to measure in America, and by extension, everywhere, the cost of living? Those hitherto indicators like the Consumer Price Index, the PSI, and unemployment rates are no longer able to provide reliable snapshots of modern economic realities. Why do they fall short? A former comptroller of the currency, the Ludwig Institute for Shared Economic Prosperity, Boss, described what he termed the TLC as an alternative metric called TLC. It provides a more accurate analysis of the struggles of families with median or lower incomes. It also factors the cost of those items we mentioned earlier, together with food, housing, utilities, childcare, healthcare, technology, and other miscellaneous expenses. What is the true cost of living? We would try to give you certain figures as presented by dependablenumberio.com and other reputable websites. But before then, it will be nice to provide some caution. First, it has to be noted that the cost of living varies from state to state. It even varies within the same state. Therefore, any figure you find will be the average of what obtains in America at best. If you want the basic lunchtime menu on the business district, you will be spending around $19 for one. In an expensive restaurant, it averages around $17.50. Domestic beer costs somewhere between $2.97 to $5 per half a litre. One bottle of good quality red wine costs between $12 to $15. Still on food, bread for 2 people for 1 day costs around $3.10. Now let's talk about rent. The monthly rent for 900 square feet home in an expensive area averages $3,073. A one-bedroom apartment in the city centre on average costs $1,704.18, while the same outside of the city centre costs $1,376.65. If you compare these figures with what those items cost in other countries, you will realise that they're more expensive. Comparing those prices to what those items cost within the past 5 years, the increase in the cost of living in the US will become really alarming. We can say the same thing about utilities such as electricity, heating, cooling, water and garbage disposal. Even prepaid mobile tariffs and internet are not cheap either. Let's look now at some of the reasons the cost of living is so high in America. Rising energy and petrol prices. At the start of the pandemic, oil prices slumped. However, as the demand gradually started staging a comeback, the oil price hit a 7-year high. This is happening throughout the world. The United States cannot be exempted from this. The country's gasoline currently costs $3.31 a gallon on average from $2.39 for the same quantity a year ago. The same is happening to the price of gas also. It has skyrocketed with people around the world, including those in America, left with eye-watering central heating bills. The situation in America is not helped by the demand from Asia and the cold winter in Europe, which ate deep into gas reserves, thereby driving up prices. Goods shortages. During the pandemic, the price of most consumer goods jumped. This is partly due to how consumers are stuck at home during the lockdown. They spent a lot on household goods and home improvements since they couldn't go to restaurants or on vacation. At the same time, local manufacturers and those in places such as Asia faced shutdowns due to the same restrictions. It didn't take long before demand overwhelmed the supply of their goods. Since then, it's been a struggle for them to keep up with demand. This automatically led to shortages of materials such as plastic, construction materials and steel. Here we are now, facing the prices that have been driven up by those things. Timber now costs about 160% more in America. Major US retailers Nike and Costco have no other choice than to put up their prices due to higher supply chain costs. The cost of living is thus pushed further up. Even microchips, which are vital to the manufacturing of cars, computers and household goods, are in terribly short supply. Russia-Ukraine war. Just as the world economy was making a recovery from the pandemic so that soaring costs could be lower, Russia invaded Ukraine. This war is pushing up prices of more essential categories. Tim Oy Analytics economists in a report explained the greatest risk facing global supply chains has just shifted from the pandemic to the military conflict between Russia and Ukraine and the resulting geopolitical and economic uncertainties. To illustrate, US oil prices have risen more than 11% since the beginning of Russia's attack on Ukraine. Well, it's not only America that is feeling the heat. The countries exporting to the US are not at all spared. Russia and Ukraine are among the huge exporters of grain and fertilizer. Now that trade has been hamstrung by the conflict, the global food supply chain is already under pressure. That makes it difficult to tackle the soaring food prices. Rising wages. The current incessant rise in wages is attributable partly to factors earlier mentioned and partly to how people are quitting the workforce or changing jobs in the last 3 years. The Labour Department says that as of April 2022, more than 4 million people have quit their jobs within 2 years. That's the biggest spike on record. The effect of this is that firms are finding it challenging to recruit staff such as drivers, food processors and waiters. In a survey of 50 major retailers in America, 94% are found to be having trouble filling empty roles. This forces companies to put up wages. They're also being compelled to offer signing-on bonuses that'll attract and retain staff. McDonald's and Amazon, for example, are offering hiring bonuses in the range of $200 to $1,000. Those extra employer costs are automatically passed on to consumers. No wonder global clothing brand Next blamed their price rises for 2022 on climbing wage costs. Climate impact. Extreme weather is disrupting economic activities in many parts of the world. This has contributed to the increased cost of living in America. Examples are hurricanes Ida and Nicholas, which passed through the Gulf of Mexico and damaged US oil infrastructure. Global oil supplies felt hit by hurricanes. Also, when a fierce winter storm forced major factories in Texas to close, problems meeting the demand for microchips were worsened. Add that to the drought in Brazil, the world's largest coffee producer. The country recently had a poor harvest. The coffee market in America was badly hit. All these increase the cost of living. Other reasons. The trade barriers cost leads to more costly imports and higher prices in America. New post-pandemic trading rules, roaming charges for returning travelers, and US import tariffs on Chinese goods are among the costs that are being passed invariably to US consumers. The end of pandemic support is also contributing to the rising cost of living. Governments are now unwinding support given to businesses. Public spending and borrowing that increased in the country during the pandemic led to tax rises. Please, we don't want this conversation to end here. Its continuation will so much depend on your comments. So what do you think is responsible for this high cost of living in America? Thank you for watching this video. Please don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell.